Welcome to Integrate or Die. My name is Steve Hunt.
And I'm Jordan Katz.
So, in this episode, we talked to Adam Greenberg, who focuses on technology around scheduling. And scheduling isn't a fascinating conversation because if you think about it, when you control somebody's time, you're literally controlling their life. And I think we tend to think of technology for scheduling very much as operational. But a couple of things that came away from me in this conversation is, first of all, Adam talked about the emotional aspects that go into it, that this technology has a huge impact on engagement and feeling because, when you can't make it to work or stuff like that, there's all sorts of like uh, stuff read into things when people say I'm not available. It's like people can read it lots of different ways. The other thing that he talked about is how much this really is an integration thing. When he said scheduling, we tend to focus on the schedule, but he goes, look, when you're looking at a schedule, you're really balancing three very complicated areas. One, what the company needs, which can depend on, you know, work demands, it can depend on skill requirements, it can depend on overtime rules and regulations. There's all this data that can affect that. It's what employees need and what they want, which affects their life and their pay and all these other things. And then he goes, and there's moderator variables like the weather and other things that come in, so it's changing all the time. So he just talked about how much scheduling is an incredibly complicated process of integration. That was kind of some things I took away. How about you, Jordan?
Well, first of all, this is another one where I thought to myself, Steve, there's no way this is going to be an interesting podcast. Scheduling time could be the most more boring thing, just like payroll. But again, second time in a row, I was wrong. This was one of the most engaging conversations that we've had, particularly because when you think about scheduling software, or the scheduling manual entry, um, there's way more to it, right? And in this case, he explained how you not only do you think about when is someone available, when they're not available, what they're doing, what their skills are, but also like to what extent are they creating a scenario in which they have scheduling flexibility, where they're able to schedule times where it's like great for their well-being during their peak performance time, and having a scheduling system that can actually take into consideration all the different factors, not just rules based like this person's available or not, they're in the right role or not, they can be in the location or not. Well, what will this do to their overall experience as an employee? And to what extent can employees themselves create a scenario in which they're doing the things they need to do productively and effectively in a way they want to do it, where they want to do it, and when they want to do it? I found that very, very interesting that we're entering into a whole new phase of like multi-dimensional consideration about when and where people work. And then the other thing that I found really interesting is like in the HR technology discussion, we're always talking about how do we bring the human into the tech, or how do we do human-centered design and that sort of thing. And there's some scenarios in which you should take the humans out of it. First of all, we talked about swapping shifts and the effect of that negotiation. Whether you take my shift, I'll take your shift, or we got to report to the manager, or somebody forgets, like the conflict that that can create. And taking the humans out of that, it can be hugely helpful and alleviate negative impacts. And then also like the whole, if you're going to have to miss work, and the downstream cascading domino effect when someone has to miss work and the manager themselves has to start the phone tree. Can you make it? Can you make it? Can you make it? If you take the humans out of that and leverage, artificial intelligence to predict the frequency or the incidence of that type of work, then everyone's stress levels is decreased, and everyone can work more on strategic stuff rather than administrative stuff.
Yeah, and I think, Jordan, one of the things as you commented, this one is one where you think, oh, scheduling is boring. I would
Yeah.
say this conversation with Adam, whether even if you're in a scheduling technology, obviously, but if you even work with schedules, if you manage schedules, Adam shared so much insightful stuff
So
about
much.
what we should be thinking about when we're controlling somebody's time, which is controlling their
Yeah.
life. And it was just a really, really fascinating conversation. With that, let's go talk to Adam. Hey, Adam, welcome to Integrate or Die. So, we always start the show by telling you why we asked you to be on the show. And it really is because your background is in building technology for workforce scheduling and time management, which, I always stress the criticality of it. When you control somebody's time, you're literally controlling their life. So, I mean, this is like major technology in terms of impact on employee experience. But that's kind of why we asked you on the show. But how would you describe yourself? What's your expertise? What is your focus in the world of HR technology?
Well, I'd be shy to call myself an expert, Steve, but I have been in this space a long time, so 20 plus years. in various roles in various companies that do different things. But I would describe myself as being particularly passionate about achieving outcomes, and someone who likes to get things done and is willing to do the work to get things done, and has a passion for how technology can both impede and improve our lives, and how do we make sure that it's more on the improved side. That's how I would describe myself, except for a father and a wine lover and a sea kayak enthusiast, and all those other great things.
Cool. Well, talk about the technology though, because you really, you've created this company, and what is it, the problem you're trying to solve, and what is it doing? Tell people like what this technology is, because I think it's an area where a lot of people aren't even aware of it, but the people that have to use it are really aware of it because it has such a big impact on their life. Get to tell them about, well, so what is it? What is the makeshift technology? What does it actually do?
Well, to talk about what it does, let's start at sort of the beginning, the origin story. Is it was built for nurses, nurse scheduling. And when you think about a healthcare environment, you have a very regulated, rules-driven, complex environment for scheduling that literally could mean life or death for any of us who have ever been in a hospital environment. And so it's an incredibly important and incredibly impactful part of human experience is that when you're most vulnerable and you find yourself needing to be cared for by another person, you certainly want to make sure that that person has the tools they need to do the job, and that they're properly trained, and that they don't have other things on their mind that are distracting them from focusing on the work at hand. And so we came into this at Makeshift to solve a problem, and that problem was nurse scheduling. If you've ever been in a hospital environment, or if you've ever been behind the scenes, or you know someone who's a nurse, you probably understand it's a very manual, and it's a very cumbersome and problematic process, scheduling of nurses. And I'd love to expand on that, but I don't want to talk too long between
Well,
questions.
no, I think if you can expand a little bit to say, people think scheduling and they're like, okay, it's basically you need to show up at a certain amount of time, but there's also these variables that you've got to have certain qualifications and certain people certified. So when you look at the impact of the technology, what are the main areas of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So where does one start when it comes to scheduling? And that's the question that needs to be asked. Do you start with when people are available, or do you start with what is the demand? And both of those things they happen outside of the scheduling tool typically, right? Typically you have someone in a back office who's manually creating schedules based on the information they have, but they may not have the information they need. So let's look at healthcare again as our origin story. You've got procedures, and these procedures are booked in a different tool. It's not a staff scheduling tool. It's usually an acuity type of solution or software. And these procedures are booked months and sometimes years in advance. We've all heard of the aunt who's waiting 2 years for hip surgery. Yeah. So some of these procedures are booked years in advance. And in order to fulfill the procedure, you need equipment. And that equipment is often in another system that sits outside of the scheduling tool. And then you need people to do the procedure who are qualified to use the equipment. And those skills and certifications to do the procedures, they expire. And so when you schedule something 2 years in advance and you're relying on having the equipment, you need a view on that equipment because maybe the inventory isn't available when you first scheduled it, and you need to have a view on the skills and certifications. Maybe they expire. Then you're looking at people's mental health and well-being. And I mean the nurses themselves, the doctors themselves. Do they have time off scheduled? Are they part of a union or a collective bargaining agreement? And all of that data is sitting in separate systems. So you got to think about their skills, their time off, their seniority, and the rules around when they're scheduled, the inventory to actually deliver on the procedure, and the procedure themselves. It really ties in nicely with your topic of your podcast because it has to be integrated, and more often than not, it isn't.
Yeah, I was just thinking it's like integrate and thrive. Integrate,
Yeah.
or because I don't integrate and die on this one, but yeah,
No,
wow.
Yeah,
we don't need to
and
do
at
that.
first, I thought you're describing this. I'm thinking, well, why is this difficult, right? A computer is amazing. Even an Excel spreadsheet is amazing at organizing data based on rules, right? So if there's a rules-based approach, technology is the thing. But that was when you were saying we have a scheduling issue and we have an equipment issue and we have a people issue. I'm like, those three things, no problem. A computer can do that. But then you started talking about wellness, well-being, perceptions, the elements that are not just rote into stone, like this person went to University of Michigan, right? That's not changing. That's when I started to think, well, this is getting hard and maybe this is getting unique. So given how good computers are at rules-based decision making and where you're integrating into things that are much more fluid, is is that where what you do is differentiated and unique, or is there another point that drives extreme value to your clients?
It is now. I'd like to answer that, Jordan. It's a great question.
Yeah.
I'd like to answer it two different ways.
Yeah.
Now we have artificial intelligence, and artificial intelligence provides enormous promise on the ability to predict situations that you can act on now to prevent an outcome that you don't want. But on the other side, if you think about early days, and talking about wellness and talking about empathy versus efficiency, sometimes these two things collide. You think about giving the nurses, and look, it doesn't have to be nurses.
Right.
We serve diverse industries, but I'm using healthcare because it's the origin story, and it's a big impact to all of our lives. But you think about the nurses, and things come up that you can't predict with the very best AI, or the best computer can't predict the fact that a nurse's daughter was chosen for an award at school, and the presentation is tomorrow morning, and she has a shift tomorrow morning, and she doesn't want to have to call her charge nurse and ask for time off because last week her son was sick and she took time
Right.
off, and the week before that she had a car accident and couldn't come to work. And so you want to be able to put the power in the hands of the people that are doing the job. And so the ability to do shift swapping, the ability to pick up an open shift, the ability to trade a shift, bid on a shift, change a shift, all of these things in the power of their hand is where that the sort of empathy piece lies, if you will.
And
Yeah, it's
speaking of
here's
empathy, we forget about the managers, right? The manager doesn't want to get that phone call or that email and then have to chase people down. Sorry.
And it,
Yeah.
it creates, I saw you wanted a question, but this is when I said that I'm passionate about outcomes. This is an example of how incredibly passionate I am, and all of us at Makeshift are, about the end user. And I'll talk about that in a moment, but it really is important because you can create, and we hire an RN to be on our staff, to help us with our development and to help us think about our go to market and our messaging, to make sure we're directing it. And there's things I never even thought of because, well, I'm not a nurse, but these groups of people who work together informally swap shifts all the time. They do it in the coffee room, and then they inform the manager, no, I'm picking up Melissa's shift, I'm picking up Jim's shift. And the manager's, great, you sorted it out, no problem. But here's what happens when you're doing this person to person, and the behind the scenes is, hey, can you take my shift next week? My son has a soccer game. I'm sorry, I can't. Well, I did it for you last week. I really need you to take the shift. Now you're creating animosity between the teams, and there's no need for that. Technology can settle for that. A shift has been posted. Doesn't matter whose it was. Doesn't matter if you did a favor for the person. Doesn't matter if you like the person. A shift is available. Do you want to pick it up or not? So that's sort of the stuff that we don't think about, computers can't
Yeah.
solve for, and it's the human intelligence, the emotional intelligence part of running a business.
Yeah, this is so, sort of saying, like, our next sort of question is, the kind of what you consider your main area of expertise, this idea of looking at HR technologies, different capabilities. And naturally, you think scheduling, okay, it's going to be workforce operations. But as you're talking, it's a lot about employee engagement because kind of
Mhm.
going back to time is one of the most sensitive things you can have. That's the only thing we truly have to give, right? And so when you get into this technology that gets into time, and is your story about, like, when you say, "Oh, I can't make it in," you feel like you're being judged, and there's just all kinds of emotional. So this is an operational system that has a massive impact on employee engagement. It's kind of fascinating that connection. So when you look at the technology in this space, our first question is on this next one is like successes. What's something that you're like, there's new technology, you're talking about AI, but there's also what you guys have been doing for a while. What is something you're like, why isn't everyone doing this right now? What's like a capability in your technology that you're just like, come on, people, everyone should do this?
And ironically, Steve, it's the ability to integrate to third-party mission critical applications. When we built the app ground up over a decade ago, we started with making sure that we had a robust set of APIs. And APIs, if you're not technical, basically just allows you to exchange information with third-party systems. And not only did we ensure that we had a robust set of APIs, and this is not a standard thing. Many organizations and software platforms do not have APIs. They have to create direct point-to-point integrations. They can't publish them for others to integrate as well. So it's not just about us.
Interesting.
We've created the APIs, made them open, and published them so the customer can play with the APIs and create their own integrations. A third-party service integrator can do it. We can do it. A competitive product that maybe is competitive, maybe it's complementary, they can access it as well. Because we're all trying to solve the same problem, which is as SAP says brilliantly, trying to improve lives and make the world run better. And I think we're a small piece of that, but an important piece, and a piece we're proud to contribute to our solving.
Yeah, well, that's so interesting because you talk about the challenge of scheduling is it's really bringing together all of these external variables on what the company needs, all these external variables on what's going on in employees' lives, then a lot of moderating variables too around things like weather, stuff like that,
Right. Right.
and how to bring this together and just sort of sharing this. Are there
Mhm.
certain like particular integrations that a lot of people don't think about when it comes to scheduling? It's like, when we created Makeshift, this was a particular one where we really said, we have to solve this integration problem.
Yeah, the number one piece is skills,
Mm.
skills and certifications, and then the rules around if somebody is eligible to work, not based on their skills, but based on other rules like a collective bargaining agreement. So we made sure, there's so many conversations we have with clients that start with, can we store our skills data inside of Makeshift? And the answer is, well, you can, but is that your system of record for skills data? Because that's a deep area in itself. And then surely they always come back with, oh, no, we have a validated LMS, and that's where they do the training, and that's where we store the skills, and that's where the expirations are stored. And we get alerts when but we need to make sure it's in scheduling. And that's where we talk about our APIs.
Yeah.
And we've pre-built integrations that are ready to go out of the box to most leading HCM applications, including SuccessFactors, as well as others that are in the market as well.
Wow.
Nice.
So looking at the next question on current innovations, because you're talking, so what you're talking about there is like, hey, the mechanics and pulling this data together. But you were sharing some of the other things on current innovations, particularly like, this adjusting I guess the relationship aspect of scheduling was really fascinating. What are the stuff you're most excited about that you're working on right now that you're like, this is going to take us to the next level?
Mm-hmm. The two pieces is the data that you have. So being able to call it and ask it questions.
Mhm.
In today's environment, or I should say yesterday, because things are moving quickly with the introduction of artificial intelligence. But only a year ago, a large company, especially if they wanted their data, they wanted to make decisions based on their data. They have people that are specialized in running queries of the database and putting that data together in a way that executives can consume so they can make decisions. What I'm really excited about on the data side, and then there's one other piece I want to get into, but on the data side is artificial intelligence and natural learning language modules allow you to just ask questions using your regular voice or typing it in, simply saying, hey, show me how many shifts are swapped in the RN department on Fridays. Show me how many skills are expiring in the next 6 months. Show me the number of times a call out was sent to fill a position that has become vacant because of someone's called in or whatever. Show me how often that doesn't get filled or who typically fills it. So you can just think of a question and just ask the system, and it'll instantly provide a response in a beautiful graphical way that you can consume instantly and help you make decisions. And then you can actually act on it and say, well, that's interesting. Change this piece of the puzzle so that this happens more efficiently, and then measure it. So the ability to own the data, to query the data using just regular voice, not having to write code or do queries, is very, very exciting and impactful. And the other side is what I talked about or alluded to earlier is predictability. The ability to predict what's going to happen based on, even like you said, Steve, weather. You can integrate into the weather. You can really, your imagination is all that's limiting the ability for AI to predict an outcome. It's very exciting and very fast moving.
I'd love to hear an example of some of the impact that has occurred as a result of that, right? We're sort of like in the middle of the value chain here. Take me down towards the end of the value chain where you're saying, I predicted X, Y, and Z, and as a result, my company is, if it's healthcare, like my patients are getting better clinical outcomes, or the bottom line is effective. Share some stories on the value impact.
I didn't know that question was coming, and I love that you asked it, because
I'm the wild card here. I'm chaos.
I love it, man. I love it because it's a great question, and I do have an answer, thankfully.
Nice.
Which is, we loaded when we're creating a module. It's called Shift Predict, and it's powered by a third party called Ikigai Labs, which is a specialist in tabular generative AI data. They're also an SAP partner, so it's another endorsement of the power of the ecosystem and the need to integrate and collaborate through that ecosystem that only SAP does the best in the world. So Shift Predict can take information. We built it using historical data. So we took 9 years of data from one of our clients. We anonymized it, so it's a big hospital chain, and it happens to be up in Canada. Long-term client. Took 9 years of that historical data, and we showed, here's a prediction on what the scheduling should look like based on the following constraints. And we just used budget data as one constraint, just as an example. But then we started running it, and we started connecting it to their real-time scheduling, and we started to see a spike of unfilled shifts and demand. And it was like really interesting to us. We didn't know why, because we're not inside the organization. But we did place a call into the customer success team, placed a call into their contact and said, we're noticing a spike in unfilled shifts and a spike in demand. And as it turned out, it tied into a spike in COVID cases. So nurses are being scheduled, not able to fill their shifts, and patient demand is increasing. And that allowed them to make some decisions around contingencies that they had to put into place, movement around the locations that were the hot spots, and trying to get ahead of the curve. That example, when I was given the example, when someone shared with me in an all hands call, it gave me goosebumps, because that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about predicting outcomes and improving lives, literally our lives.
Sure.
Wow.
Nice.
Just a better understanding and having this, thinking about this data, about scheduling data, which it tells you so much about what's going on in the organization. What about, and you talked a lot earlier though about the impact this also has on employees. And can you talk, like, for example, the scheduling is, are you able to do that with employees? Like, hey, I need to take 2 hours off Tuesday. How can I do this, or something like that? How is this technology affecting employees' lives? And what are you most sort of, on the current innovations, you're most excited about there?
Yeah, no, that's exactly the piece that we focus on the most. And it's almost a frustration on the buying side. Like when you're selling software, the buyers are often looking at certain reasons for buying that don't correlate to what the users actually need. And then you end up with a problem of investing a ton in technology, and you're not getting the consumption or the adoption that you want. But we focus a lot on UX, something we're very proud of. We've award-winning UX across a number of different analyst firms, and it's the ability to put that control in the hand of the user, that it's simple and it's easy to use. So how often, I mean, I'm the CEO of a tech company, so I'm in a position of power where I can control my schedule. And how incredible is that? And yet still, I check my schedule probably 30 times a day. What am I doing next? Where am I going next? Oh, this flight was delayed. I have to move this. Oh, this call's more important than this one. I'm going to have to reprioritize. And I'm in control. Imagine someone who isn't in that control, how much their schedule controls their lives and the impact on mental health and well-being. You know, according to the Canadian and American Mental Health Association, the number one impact on mental health when it comes to their workplace is lack of control of their schedule. And it makes perfect sense to me. So we're passionate about that, Steve. We make it easy to use. We make it very simple to navigate, and give them control and flexibility over their schedules. Something we're very proud of and focus on.
That's cool. I think 2 point, Jordan, I'm just thinking in technologies in general, how many technologies are not designed to help actually the employees. They're designed to appeal to the leader who's checking the budget, and then they force it on the poor employee. That's like, oh my gosh.
I mean, we should do a schedule on expense submission tools and travel entry tools. Like, we could do a whole separate series on that. Really get to the heart of what makes life easy and hard.
It's a great example. That the expense management is a nightmare. I mean, and someone who travels constantly, even though we have some of the best tools available, they're still not easy. They're not good enough.
No.
I remember when you could just take a picture of your receipt and send it. I'm like, oh, thanks.
Who remember when we had a corporate card? I had a Diners Club. Remember a Diners Club? And you just swipe it, and they just they paid for it. Like, you had a limit, and you were trusted because you're a grown adult. Arguably, probably that was a bad decision on their part for me. Still not a grown adult, but I just went and I did my business, and I booked travel through Diners Club, and everything was handled. I didn't have to spend hours taking pictures of receipts and submitting them.
Well, I'll just suffice to say the world would be a better place if every executive had to use the same technology that employees had to use with no administrative support. That will never happen.
On that, we're all fired.
We're seeing it in our lives as well. And we're actually starting to see, and I thought this was pretty cool, because we're starting to see how schedules are being integrated into even your car. Yeah. So you're like car, think about EVs, right? You can schedule the time of day that your car is charging in order to reduce the cost of electricity. You can your car reminds you of where you're going and how long it's going to take to be there. All of this is scheduling, and it's really, really cool. And I think we're all starting to realize how important scheduling is, how it's the one thing that we use constantly, no matter who we are, where we are, what we do for a living. Your scheduling is core to running your life. So I went on a bit of a sidetrack.
No, it's absolutely true though. There was there's a movie called Clockwise with John Cleese that you really should see, Adam, if you haven't seen, because it's about the first step to knowing who you are is knowing when you are.
Wow, I like that. I'm gonna post that.
There you go.
I love that. Yeah.
So going on, we're kind of dancing around this, but what about mistakes or missteps? When you look at the kind of what you're trying to solve, what are things either you're like, we should stop using this technology, or there's something that doesn't work, or this is a stupid idea, or just a failure, maybe in your own experience or what you're seeing, where you're like, really, just this, we need to stop this?
I think overthinking is something that we tend to do. Is we look at a problem, we want to design a solution, and these are complex things. So you've got product management people, you have user experience people, you have engineers, you have marketers, right? You have executives representing finance, operations, sales, etc. And sometimes, you come to the table with a problem and you try to solve it, and you just overanalyze it, you overthink it. We do that probably too much. I look at it not necessarily as a problem, because I know that it's just how passionate people are about solving the problem. But I don't know that it's actually, when we actually do it, that we've spent the wrong amount of time doing the wrong things. I'm pretty happy with the progression that we've made, and the things that we're doing. And hey, look, you got to take chances. You got to try things and fail and learn from it and keep going.
Yeah, but sometimes this might be people just were trying to put too many features in or too many, just keep it
Exactly.
simple. So a lot of that
Mhm.
is paring it back. What about, you've talked a lot right at the beginning that so much of your success is dependent on integration with others. And I think it really was fascinating. I think, well, actually, the other one was we did talk to him on say about payroll. He actually said APIs. That was his big frustration
Yeah.
too, is integration, specifically.
Interesting. Yeah.
What would you like to see other companies build? Like, so, because you guys integrate, you work with a lot of other systems. What's something that you wish somebody else would do better? Say, boy, if you is because we're not going to build this. It's too far outside of your core capability. But if somebody else built it, it would make your solutions work better. What is it that
Mhm.
you wish somebody else would build?
Okay, and I believe this is coming. So here we go. Okay, this is like a reveal in my brain. I wish someone would build a layer on a platform. Like, let's just back up, for example, SAP's business technology platform
Mhm.
is a brilliant piece of technology that seamlessly allows all third parties to connect in a seamless way. And then you have the iPhone, which is also a
Mhm.
brilliant piece of technology. And I actually think that the two are very similar. BTP allows you to connect all these different apps that aren't necessarily related, or they are, and they have to integrate, and it simplifies that experience. Same with the iPhone. So the iPhone is a platform like BTP, and all these different apps are from third parties. And I can seamlessly just go from my flight to my banking to book a hotel to rent a car to email to
Sure.
calendar, whatever it is that I want. But they're all apps. So I wish someone would invent a way to get rid of apps altogether. You still have to have them, but maybe they're in the background and you don't see them. And I don't have to go and, oh, which app was that? Oh, where is that app? Where is that? Drives me crazy. And I think it drives a lot of people crazy, even though it sounds a little bit privileged, because it's still pretty cool and we have it and it works really, really well. But just want to ask it, book me a flight, check my calendar. When's the best time to do this? Look up this, look up that. Like, just ask it questions and get rid of apps. That's what I wish someone would invent. And I truly believe it's coming, and it's coming fast. There will be no more apps. You'll just talk to your phone. Maybe not even a phone. Maybe it's a device in your head. I don't know. It's scary to think, but you just ask a question and you get instant information.
So it's kind of like a Siri supercharged at a higher level. Yeah,
Right?
that's fascinating. Yeah, I think it's well, certainly in an employee experience too, we're seeing that move that way. And we still live in like, oh, I go into my expense management or I go into my travel management, I go into time management and finding a way to pull it together. Because it's interesting you're saying on the back end, we're kind of doing this
Mhm.
because to manage the workforce, we need to pull all this data together, skills, pay, time. But on the
That's
employee
right.
perspective, they're managed through different areas. So pulling that together, I think that's really, yeah, I think you're right. I think that is going to happen. I don't know exactly
Mhm.
how it's going to happen, but it seems like a logical progression.
I,
Yeah,
and I
I
I love
do.
your and I love your idea because there's a great piece of research that I cite a lot these days, which is the average number of applications employees interact with a day is 35. So
Wow.
you're swapping through all different
Wow.
applications, even if they don't know it, right? They're using all these different applications. Now, that's if you've created a seamless employee technology experience, that's great. But if you haven't, and they're literally like going from not single sign, I got to remember my username, password, like
Oh.
the minutes it takes for you to recover focus
Hmm.
from swapping into a new app, entering your username and password, and then getting back into the task you're doing is such wasted productivity. It's just like
Y-
a weight, an anchor on the ankle of people who are trying to do
Yeah.
their job well.
This is interesting. I keep praising those because it has a massive impact on design of technology. Every
Sure.
person, when they build a solution, thinks about the user interface, and they're always fighting to get users. They want users in their system, right? For
Hmm.
most cases, a lot of HR technology. Now you're saying, look, you're not going to own the user interface. So if you look at like what a lot of the magic of like what the scheduling technology does is not the user interface. It's all the stuff that goes
Mhm.
on behind the scenes, which is incredibly complicated, and then
That's right.
simplifying it. But now, if all you owned was the behind the scenes stuff, I think
Mhm.
that has an interesting effect on the self identity of HR technology creators. You're like, it's kind of like the Intel inside or whatever. It's like, yeah, you're going to build a system that no one's ever going to see.
Right. Right. I mean, it's I I recently had a situation where I was on a business trip. I was overseas in Europe, and my phone was stolen. So
Oh
pickpocket
no.
situation.
Yeah.
Talk about
Yeah.
anxiety. I was now, oh, I had no access to anything.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Like, and then when I finally, it took days, but when I finally got a phone, I had to even though there's allegedly you log back in and it doesn't. I had to reinstall all my apps, back up, grab the data, back it up, da 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 da. And then, of course, there was times where I'd be doing something and I'd be like, "Oh, just go to my app. Oh, I haven't downloaded that app." This sort of thing. So, uh, I would like to see that go away, and that we just have a device and we can just talk to it, and it'll just do what we need to get done.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's coming.
I see it's
Yeah.
coming, yeah, and I think that said, and it has, I think, big implications on this field in general, where it's like, currently a lot of people that create technology can show people the technology they create. It's like, yeah, I can't show you because it's buried behind this stuff
Right.
behind the curtains. So our last couple questions, one is on career guidance in like HR technology. Like we're like any industry, our success depends on bringing people in that can create and build
Mhm.
stuff. I'm guessing that when you were young, you probably did not say, "Gee, when I grow up, I want to make workforce scheduling technology," or maybe you
No, I
did.
didn't.
I've been
You're right.
obsessed with since I was a small child. I've been obsessed with scheduling.
Nope. You're right.
So, what what sort of career guidance would you give, like in this area? It's incredibly complicated. Do you see this as a advice? You'd say, "Hey, there's a career to be had in the area of like workforce scheduling technology," and if so, how would a person go about like doing it? What would you like to see in terms of talent coming into this industry happening?
Well, I'm going to answer this probably not the way that you want me
That's
to. My
Right.
advice, and I do some guest speaking at
Mhm.
Simon Fraser BD School of Business, the leadership course, and to the graduate program, which I love because I learn so much every time I do it. Unfortunately, I haven't done it in a while because of COVID, but I digress. The advice I always give is find a job that allows you to live the life you want to live, and not don't try to find a job that you just want to. It's a great job to work, but think of one that enables the life. And I think that speaks to what I said when I introduced myself, is I'm very passionate about outcomes. And the interesting part for me was the job that I chose and the career path that I took was to give me a flexible schedule, which is not on purpose. I mean, it really is just a coincidence that now I'm the CEO of a scheduling company, when I always sought in my career decisions what would allow me to have a flexible schedule that would allow me to live the life I want to live, that allows me to be geographically independent, that allows me to have control over my time, where I work, who I work with, what I do. But it all comes down to the lifestyle I want to live. And that would be my advice to people coming into the workforce today: is everyone wants a different kind of life. Some people want a life where they go work 9 to 5 and they shut off and that's it. Some people want a life that allows them to have an early retirement. Some people only want to make lots of money and that buy nice things. That's all they care about. And some people want to just improve lives and want to help others. Find a job in a career that allows you to live the life you want to live. And it just happens to be, for me, it was all around having flexible schedule.
no, I think that's interesting.
Nice.
That's good advice. Yeah, Jordan, go ahead.
No, just it takes all different people want different things, right?
Yeah.
Some people really thrive in that structure. Some people thrive in chaos. Some people, need someone to tell them what to do and then they, or what not what to
Mhm.
do, but what the outcome is that they care about. And
Mhm.
the ability to flex in that paradigm can be highly valuable. I think if we have one
Mhm.
question I have is how does the scheduling software that you've created beyond just trading shifts, allow for people who are maybe in a role that requires scheduling, but aren't as structured as you would typically think they would need to be in that type of role.
Yeah, it allows them to set their availability. I think that's the
Mhm.
number one thing. They say, here's when I can work, and that's it. You don't if I'm not available these days, you can't schedule me. And often schedules are made and people are scheduled when they can't work. They've already said they can't work.
Oh,
Or
sure. I've been
they've
there.
made
Yeah.
right. They've made their time off request. It's already approved. Somehow the scheduler doesn't know about this, and they've scheduled them when they're off on vacation, and then they have to call and they tell them, and then the person on the other line's frustrated, and it's like, it's not my fault, and you create this animosity. So that would be the number one thing. But I just want to go back quickly to one other part of the question you asked, Steve, about advice for people coming into the workforce, because I'm also particularly passionate about that. How do you become successful, right? I get asked that question a lot. What do you look for in someone when you're hiring? Just like get shit done, right? Don't worry about whose job it is, or is it perfect, or what. Just get shit done. Just do it, get it done, take the initiative, and you'll get noticed, because
Yeah.
that's what we really need in business, is stuff to get done. And if you're getting stuff done, you'll get noticed and you'll climb in your career very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Although it's funny, in my book Talent Tectonics, I say it's different when you're in a small company versus a big company, but that's a whole different
Sure.
podcast.
It's true.
But
It's true.
the very last question, Adam, is what question should we be asking about the future of HR technology? What would you say? This is a question this field needs to be asking, and then of course we're going to ask you to answer it too. So, what is the question, the big question that you say you wish people were talking about?
It all comes down to the end user for me. Will people use it, and will they love to use it? Not just be willing to use it, but will they love to use it? The technology integrates with a human being. And if that human being loves it, you'll get the return on investment. And I wish more organizations would talk to their end users and bring them into the buying process to make sure they love it.
Such great advice. Yeah, absolutely.
The
I
most
see that.
important integration.
It's so rare. It's so weird.
It
I've been
never
through
happens.
these huge demo discussions, and there's no one in the room that would actually use the technology. There's all these people that think they know that they represent the person. It's like, and usually it's the people that are not in the room are the people that are the most employees. Like, we got like 10,000 retail employees. Well, grab one of them.
Yeah, just one.
Just
Yeah.
one.
And I could share so many statistics. You and I had a great exchange on LinkedIn a few months ago, where I kind of went off on the statistics of the end user and how scheduling impacts minorities and women. 2/3 of shift workers are women, for example. Unbelievable. I had no idea. So you have to talk to the end user and make sure that they love it, and that it's going to serve them, and it's going to serve their life.
Wow, that's great. Well, on that point, that is great advice. Adam, thank you so much for showing up on Integrate or
Adam.
Die. This is why we do it, Jordan. Man, every time
That's
just
right.
learning such cool stuff by talking about people that dive into these different topics. So, Adam, thank you so much for appearing
my
on
pleasure.
our show.
Yes.
My pleasure, guys. I'm flattered you asked me. Thank you, and look forward to the next conversation.